On my wedding night, I learned he married me from my mother's house.
Ambad Maridimam FR Magnolia House is a fictional first-person revenge story for single voice narration. On my wedding night, I learned that my new husband had not married me for love. He had married me for a house. Daniel was in the hotel shower when his smartwatch lit up on the nightstand. I was not trying to spy on him. I only looked because the message appeared beside our wedding photo. It said, "Do not let her read page 7. Once Magnolia House belongs to the company, she gets nothing." The sender was a woman named Mia. For several seconds, I could not move. Downstairs, our guests were still laughing beneath the garden lights. My white dress was hanging beside the window. 20 minutes earlier, Daniel had held my face in his hands and promised that he would protect me for the rest of our lives. Now a stranger was discussing how to take the only thing my mother had left me. I took a photograph of the message with my phone. Then I put the watch exactly where I had found it. When Daniel returned, smiling and asking whether I was ready to go back downstairs, I smiled too. That was the hardest performance of my life. Magnolia House was not just a house. It was a 14-room inn on 12 acres outside Richmond, Virginia. My grandparents had bought the property when it was nearly falling apart. My mother, Susan, had spent 30 years restoring it. She repaired the old floors, planted the gardens, and turned the barn into a wedding hall. After she died, she left the property to me. Daniel knew what it meant to me. He also knew it was worth almost $3 million. I met him 18 months before our wedding. He called himself a business consultant. He was calm, patient, and unusually interested in helping with the inn. When the water heater failed, he found a contractor. When I struggled with reservations, he built a new system. When I cried on the anniversary of my mother's death, he sat beside me all night. I thought his kindness was proof of his character. I did not understand that he was studying me. 2 weeks before the wedding, Daniel had brought me a thick folder. He said, it contained routine insurance documents and papers for a new company called Magnolia Hospitality. He claimed the company would protect the inn if a guest sued us. I had signed some of the forms, but he told me page 7 needed a witness. We were supposed to finish it on the Monday after our wedding. At breakfast the next morning, Daniel asked about that page before he asked how I had slept. I told him I had a headache and wanted to wait. His smile disappeared for less than a second. Then it returned. That tiny change frightened me more than anger would have. We drove back to Magnolia House that afternoon. Daniel stayed close to me as our families packed decorations and leftover food. He kissed my cheek whenever someone looked at us. To everyone else, we were happy newlyweds. That night, after he fell asleep, I took the folder into the pantry and read every page. Page 7 was not an insurance form. It was a deed. The document would transfer Magnolia House from me to Magnolia Hospitality for $10. A second agreement gave Daniel complete control of the company if I became sick, disappeared, or failed to participate in the business for 30 days. My signature had already been copied onto the bottom of that second agreement. I had never signed it. My hands began to shake, but I forced myself to photograph every page. Then I returned the folder to Daniel's desk. The next morning, I told him I needed to meet a florist. Instead, I drove to see Elena Brooks, the attorney who had handled my mother's estate. Elena studied the photographs in silence. Then she locked her office door. She told me not to confront Daniel. She said the copied signature and the false description of the deed could be evidence of fraud. Most important, she checked the state business records. Magnolia Hospitality had been created 6 months before Daniel proposed to me. I was not listed as an owner. Daniel owned 49%. Mia Cole owned 51%. The company address was a small house in North Carolina. Alina searched the address and turned her laptop toward me. The property belonged to Maya. Public photographs showed her standing beside Daniel at a neighborhood Christmas party 3 years earlier. His arm was around her waist. I wanted Mia to be an old girlfriend. I wanted this to be a simple affair, because an affair was something I could understand. It was worse. Alina found a marriage record from Nevada. Daniel and Maya were husband and wife. There was no divorce. My wedding had been a performance. The efficient Daniel hired was not legally registered in Virginia. The marriage certificate he gave me had never been filed with the county. I had spent the morning believing I was a betrayed wife. By lunchtime, I understood that I had never been a wife at all. I was a target. Alina called a financial crimes detective she trusted. His name was Marcus Reed. He listened without interrupting. Then he asked whether Daniel had access to my bank accounts. That question opened another door. Daniel managed the inn's online advertising account. He also paid several vendors. With Alina beside me, I called the bank and reviewed 6 months of transactions. Almost $80,000 had been sent to 3 companies I did not recognize. The invoices described roof repairs, kitchen equipment, and landscaping. None of that work had happened. All 3 companies led back to Mia. Detective Reed asked me to protect the remaining accounts and let the bank begin its own fraud review. He also asked me to continue behaving normally for a few days. Daniel believed he was one signature away from owning Magnolia House. If he became suspicious, he might disappear. So I went home to the man who had planned my ruin, and I made him dinner. I listened while he described our future. He wanted to renovate the barn. He wanted to open a second location. He wanted me to take a long vacation after transferring the property. Every plan ended with me gone and him in control. Then Daniel made a mistake. He said Mia would come on Saturday to notarize the deed. He described her as a mobile notary he had used for years. I told him that was perfect. By then, Detective Reed had found 2 other women connected to Daniel. Both had owned small businesses. Both had dated him. One had lost $60,000 after signing papers she did not understand. The other had discovered the scheme early, but Daniel had convinced her that she was imagining things. Neither woman had enough evidence alone. Together, we had a pattern. The detective did not need me to play a hero. He needed me to stay safe and give Daniel a chance to present the fraudulent documents. Alina prepared a harmless acknowledgement for me to sign instead of the deed. Officers would be nearby. The bank's investigator would watch the company accounts. I added one detail of my own. Daniel believed Saturday would be a private signing. I told him I wanted to celebrate afterward. So I invited both families and several close friends to dinner at Magnolia House. I said it would be our first event as the new owners. He loved the idea. Of course he did. He thought I was arranging a party for my own defeat. On Saturday evening, the dining room looked almost exactly as it had on our wedding night. White flowers covered the tables. Small lights glowed along the windows. Our wedding photograph stood on an easel near the fireplace. Daniel wore the same dark green suit. I wore a simple black dress that had belonged to my mother. Mia arrived carrying a leather document case and a notary stamp. Daniel introduced her as a family friend. She smiled at me as if we had never shared the same man. We sat at the long table in my mother's library. Daniel placed page 7 in front of me and covered the title with his hand. He said it was the insurance form we had discussed. I asked him to explain what the document did. He said it protected Magnolia House, but did not change my ownership. I asked Mia if that was true. She said yes. Then I moved Daniel's hand away and read the title aloud. It was a quitclaim deed transferring the property to their company. Daniel went completely still. I placed my phone on the table and showed him the photograph of the message from our wedding night. Then I showed him the company record, the false invoices, and the Nevada marriage certificate. For the first time since I had met him, Daniel had no story ready. He looked toward the door. Detective Reed stepped into the room with 2 other officers. Mia grabbed the document case, but she did not get far. Inside it, investigators found the copied signature, the false invoices, and a notary journal containing entries for meetings that had never happened. Daniel tried to blame everything on her. Mia immediately blamed everything on him. That was the moment their partnership ended. The guests were waiting in the dining room, but I did not make a speech. I did not need to humiliate Daniel with shouting. I simply opened the library doors while the officers escorted them out. Everyone saw the truth without my having to explain it. Daniel's mother began to cry. My uncle removed the wedding photograph from the easel. One of my friends held my hand while the police cars disappeared down the road. Only then did I allow myself to shake. The investigation lasted almost a year. Daniel and Mia eventually pleaded guilty to charges connected to fraud, forgery, and the money taken from my business. Evidence from my case helped reopen the complaints involving the other women. The court ordered restitution. I recovered most of the stolen money, although some of it was gone forever. Daniel sent me 2 letters before sentencing. In the first, he apologized. In the second, he blamed me for destroying his life. I answered neither one. There was nothing left to say. The hardest part was not losing the money. It was learning that my happiest memories had been designed by someone who wanted to use them against me. For months, I could not walk through the wedding barn without hearing Daniel's promises. I could not look at white roses without seeing his message to Mia. Then, one morning, I found an old note from my mother inside a cookbook. She had written it years before she became sick. It said, "A house survives when the right people keep its doors open." So that is what I did. I kept the doors open. I renamed the business Susan's Magnolia Inn. I converted a small cottage on the property into temporary housing for women rebuilding their lives after financial abuse. The first 2 residents were the women Daniel had targeted before me. Later, they helped me create workshops about contracts, credit, and warning signs hidden behind charm. The barn still hosts weddings. At first, I thought that would hurt. Instead, every honest promise spoken, there replaced one of Daniel's lies. I kept 1 copy of our wedding photograph in the bottom drawer of my desk. I do not keep it because I miss him. I keep it because the woman in that picture believed she was powerless once the truth appeared. She was wrong. Daniel married me for my name and tried to steal my mother's house. In the end, Magnolia House kept my mother's name. I kept my future. And Daniel's was the name the judge called.